Anyway, this is part of the posturing of it. Monet was not a salonier. He did not attend the salons. He was the son of a ship's chandler and was not of very refined manners. And he couldn't be bothered with all these women who were fluttering around him. And so he didn't attend the salons, but it was the salons that attended him in a way in the exhibitions. Proust admired him because, as with Elstir, he said that this was a man who had detached himself from society, who had followed his bent and painted what he wanted to paint and not had been corrupted by success. I want to talk now about two of these hostesses which had a great deal to do with Monet. There are two women who, in fact, were early collectors of Monet's pictures. One was a woman called Genevieve Strauss. She was married to a famous lawyer who happened to be the illegitimate son of a count, and that was why he was very high up in the pecking order. But Genevieve Strauss had already entered history in another way. She was her first husband was Georges Bizet, the composer of Carmen. And Bizet died at the very early age of 36. It's a myth that he died of a broken heart at the failure of Carmen. He'd actually had rheumatic fever as a boy and had gone swimming in a cold river in a hot day and had brought on a heart attack. He survived the first heart attack, but the second one killed him. And the rumor that he had committed suicide was due to the bursting of an abscess in his ear which left blood on the pillow. So the whole myth of Bizet's death from the heartbreak is totally phony. But she had a son by Bizet, Genevieve, and his name was Jacques Bizet, and he went to the same school as Marcel Proust, a very posh preparatory school. And it was there that he met Genevieve, who's now married to this posh lawyer. And she was one of the first collectors of Monet's pictures. Indeed, in her house in the Boulevard Haussmann, she had a huge circular room called the Rotunda with Monets all the way around it. One of the very early collectors. And it was through her that Proust first met the paintings of Monet. He never actually met Monet. Monet had very bad relations with journalists. Nobody ever taught him. You must not be ironic with journalists. You must not tell jokes. Because if you say something ironical, what do you think of that painting? You say, wonderful. It'll come out as wonderful and not as horrible. Irony, and he had a lot of interviews very early in his career which were disastrous, so he kept journalists at bay, and when Proust asked him for an interview, he refused him, which is a pity, because Proust wrote very well about painting. And Genevieve Strauss was an extremely liberal woman. She was a bit like Mrs. Patrick Campbell, of whom it was said, when she asked about homosexuals, says, oh, I don't care what they do, so long as they don't frighten the horses. And this tolerance was the sort of thing that Genevieve Strauss had, and she was adored by everyone. Her photographs show, isn't it funny, photographs don't show the real beauty of a person. Her face in photographs looks rather stern, but everybody who knew her said she was both charming and very beautiful. And she lived till 1926 and was one of Proust's most enthusiastic readers. You want to get a really genuine fan letter, then read Genevieve Strauss writing to Proust about his novel. It came out serially, of course, in several volumes. The woman that figures also in the novel, Genevieve Strauss is the model for one of the characters in the book called the Comtesse de Greffule, de Guermantes in the novels, one of the grandest, most beautiful women in the novel. in the novel, there is also a terrible woman called Madame Verdurin, who is a patron of the arts, who is so evil, and she has clanging cast-iron teeth, says Proust. It's a great comic novel, incidentally. It's Proust's À la Recherche, a great comic novel. And it has been suggested that one of the models for Madame Verdurin is of the great Winnaretta singer, the Princesse de Polignac. Now, Winnaretta Singer was the youngest daughter of Isaac Singer, the man who invented the sewing machine. And, of course, he was immensely wealthy. He was actually an actor who loved tinkering about with odds and ends, obviously while waiting to go on or when he was out of work. And he was the one that solved the problem that everybody else had been trying to find. How do you get a needle to go through a piece of cloth and make a complete stitch? And he invented the spool and the needle with the hole in it, and the treadle that goes with it. And of course, it's one of the great liberating inventions of the world, because like the typewriter, it gave women independence to earn their own livings in a way they hadn't been able to do before. The income was phenomenal, and he was very clever. He kept hold of the patent, and he got hold of a non-shyster lawyer who helped him preserve his funds. And he became one of the great wealthy men of the United States. However, he was great fun. He was a lovely man. He actually had 20 children. There were two, it's not Bach either. He had 2 marriages, and of those 2 marriages there were 12 legitimate children, and the rest were scattered around the world. But he was very good to them. He never denied them all. He paid up. And when he died, he left money to them all. Some of them couldn't be found. One of them turned up in Canada in the early 20th century, and Winnaretta, as we paid his due at that time. But he was a delightful man. But because the American Yellow Press got hold of his story, their lives were made hell by the gossip columns. So he decided to uproot the whole family and move it to Devon in England. And he built a huge country house there called the Wigwam. And he and all his children were there, and he was obviously a big kid. He built a circus for them, bigger than this room, of brick, and he imported people to perform for them on birthdays and things like that. The local snobs wouldn't have anything to do with him, so all the villagers came along and had a very good time. Well, his second wife was a French woman, very beautiful, indeed so beautiful that she is said to be the model for the Statue of Liberty that Bertoldi carved. And their youngest daughter was Winnaretta Singer, a remarkable woman altogether. And Isaac Singer died when Winnaretta was only 18, and it was one of the great griefs of her life. She adored her father and had a special dinner in his memory every day on the anniversary of his death, every year on the anniversary of his death. And Winnaretta, with her mother, went to live in Paris and became what is known as a dollar princess. There was a transatlantic trade or deal where the daughter of a very wealthy American family would go to Paris and marry the sons of an ancient but penniless French family. One would get the money, the other would get the title. And this happened again and again. Etienne de Beaumont, who also had a great salon in the 30s, married an American woman who came with a great fortune. And these were the dollar princesses. And Winnaretta Singer was one of the dollar princesses. She married a very handsome and very poor young aristocrat. But in the wedding arrangements, somebody forgot to tell him that his wife was lesbian. And so on the first night, he went into the marriage chamber to find her on top of the wardrobe, embattled with an umbrella, saying, "Come near me and I'll kill you." So ultimately, the marriage was dissolved by the Vatican as not being consummated.